Alright, hello everyone. We're doing another video on how to play Anima Beyond Fantasy. Last time, we made a character. Our character is named, I made two of these? I think I just made one that was an actual, yeah. We made Abru Kafajri as our character. We made a wizard mental. Oh, no. That was forget about that. We made Zamaski Grark. I remember we made a freelancer. I made a last minute decision to make a simpler character for the sake of keeping it nice and simple. So we have our character, who we made. But now let's talk about the next big thing about anima, which is combat. Now, this video is going to be like there's going to be two parts to this video. The first half of this video is just going to be talking about you as a player character in combat. The second half is going to be about, as a DM, how do you balance combat around your players? And to make sure that you try your best to give out fair fights, usually obviously with some exceptions, fair fights that are still dangerous to your player characters, but still winnable without having to make your player solve a really difficult puzzle. Obviously, you do want those difficult fights where it's more like a puzzle than a real fight, where you need to decide, all right, how do we kill this creature? Or how do we get around this creature? Like, for example, if you're level 1, you don't want to fight a dragon, but it's okay to fight a skeleton, probably. But let's talk about first combat in anima. Now, I'm going to be explaining this topic twice, technically. But first things first, let's get some tokens to demonstrate fight. Let's just find like a human, just a boring ass human. Here's a good one. Here's our hero. I'm gonna give him a name so you can see our hero. His name is Hero. In all capital letters, controlled by all players. He's my hero. Hero. And then let's get I don't know. Goblins are in anima, but I'm gonna get a goblin anyway. It's a pretty typical bad guy. Lots of goblin tokens. I like this armored one right here. Okay, it took a second. I was like, what? Alright. So, bad guy. Show nameplate. So, we have our bad guy, we have our hero. They're about to fight. So, how do we start off this fight? Well, first things first, in the base rules of anima, we'd roll for initiative. So, let's do that. Let's add these guys to a turn order. If you're doing this from roll 20s, it makes it a lot easier. Add my turn for hero and bad guy. The first method I'm going to describe is the base game methodology. I'm going to keep it as simple as possible and explain it as... I'm going to keep it simple, but I'm going to thoroughly explain it still, because this game is very complex, so it's nice to know all the facts. So I have Zemeski Kakarov here. He is unarmed. He's in a bad spot. He woke up middle of the night, doesn't have any weaponry, no gear. It's just fists. He's going to roll his initiative. Before he does that, in base anima, Zemeski Kakarov has to declare all of his actions. With his high dex and okay agility, he has 3 actions. You can find that in the physical ability section of the book, by the way, to look up how many actions you have. So, our hero is going to move less than the quarter's movement to the bad guy and punch him in the face. This is his plan. This is his game plan. And that's all he's going to do. He's not going to use that third action for anything. He's going to roll his initiative right now for that. So let's roll it. We could use the macro, which would automatically add to our turn order, but I don't like using macros. I feel it's easier to learn the game if you can just look at it and roll it. So there's our initiative. Pretty subpar. I'm just going to bullshit the stats of this goblin, by the way. This goblin, they're pretty quick. I'm going to say he's faster. He has a dagger in his hand, because I can just bullshit dagger down the top of my head. He's a little faster than our guy. Ooh, goblin goes first. Bad guy goes first. So as a DM, you don't necessarily need to, some DM, but as a DM, you don't necessarily need to say what your monster's doing, because it's better you don't. If you're using the base and rules, because it keeps things a surprise. Though you probably shouldn't change what you're doing based on what your player characters say, obviously, because that'd be a bit unfair. So bad guy had the same game plan as our hero. He's gonna shuffle on forward and attack this guy. Now, he's only declaring 1 attack, and he can only do 1. The reason why is, I'm going to tell you a spoiler, this goblin, I don't have any stats for him, but he is actually, you know what, I'll pull up some stats. Let me show you what I mean by stats. Let me find the common characters. This is a chapter 25 in the book, in the DM section. These are some common people your party might run into and potentially fight. Like, you might fight a minstrel for taking some of your gold, because he's an asshole. Or you might go kill some farmers because you're bad guys. Or maybe you'll recruit a hunter to help you move to the forest, be your, guide, and he might help you in a fight, for example. But more commonly not, you're going to fight a bandit. Bandits have 70 attack. This is a pretty typical level 1 monster, 70 to 85 attack-ish. is typical level 1. These guys, these gangliers, only have 80. Rogues tend to have less attack. He's a freelancer. You know, a fighter or soldier, as you can see, has 70, 70, level 1. They could get up to 85, even 90, I think, but, you know, generally, they're going to be a bit worse than the average player character. So now... Oh, whoops. Wrong web page. You got a quick view of the YouTube video I was watching. Whatever. So now our goblin gets to attack our hero. So we're going to roll the goblin's attack roll. Now, right now, the goblin could decide to use some fatigue points. For the example, the goblin has 5. So I'm going to save those for more desperate situations where the goblin just really wants to kill the guy because he's almost dead. The goblin, that is, or the character. But at the beginning of the fight, let's hold back and just roll normal attack roll. Go ahead and do so well. Our hero then rolls his block roll to defend against the weapon. Our hero beat the shit out of him. 168, that's really good. Now, he beat him by enough to actually get a counterattack. What's a counterattack, DM? That sounds really good. I want to do those. So first, we find the difference. The difference is 88 in favor of our hero. So let's go to combat. There's a GM screen you could use for this, but I'm assuming you only have the base book, so we're gonna find all this in the base book. Let's go to combat. I think it's like the first or like second page, the combat table. If you're using a PDF and you all have a PDF, I recommend bookmarking this page or opening a separate PDF just for this page. You'll be referencing it quite a bit because it's very difficult to memorize all these numbers. It's easy for damage, but it's hard for counterattack. So you beat him by 88, which is plus 40 to our counterattack, regardless of armor type. So let's go back to our roll 20. And we are going to roll our attack roll. We already declared we're only doing one attack, so you can only do one attack. By the way, something I'm going to bring up right now. If for any reason we had a bonus to our attack before our counterattack at our initiative, we could declare multiple attacks. For every 100 attack you have is how many attacks you can declare, but every additional attack you declare beyond your first one is a minus 25. The exception to that rule is for dual wielding, and unless you have a specific martial art, you cannot dual wield with your fists. So you get a plus 85 for our skill, and was it plus 80 for... I'm just going to double check that. Don't want to cheat in this tutorial. It's plus 40 because of our counterattack. Hit him. So we're going to roll that. Don't do plus plus. That might break things. So we're going to roll our attack. That's an open roll. This is perfect timing. Typical DM luck. If you roll a 90 or plus on your dice, you can open roll. However, when you open roll, your open roll range increases by 1. So now if I want to open roll again, I have to roll 91 or higher. So a quick way to do that is roll your result plus your result. Cool. Why do you even open roll? As my players sometimes say. This is my counterattack. The goblin still gets to defend himself. The goblin only had 60 defense, though, we saw on our previous page. So let's roll that. Our goblin also open rolled. Very good job, goblin. Let's see what that means. This might mean nothing. Okay, so now we take those results and we minus them off each other. And we have 32. Perfect. Now, 30 is actually an interesting number in this game because... Sorry, 30 and 40 are very interesting numbers. I'll show you why. So, this is going to go to the damage table. So, if you roll anywhere, if you got anywhere from 1 to 30, or sorry, 1 to 29 by your result, you do nothing to him. This is 0 damage. However, in normal base rolls Anima, you still hit him, so you still roll to see if you break his armor, which is based on the breakage score of your weapon or fists. And you would still stagger him with this. So even though you hit him and did no damage, you still staggered him. When you're staggered, you can't take active actions like, I don't know, attacking, which is terrible. Now, we beat him by 30 though, so we deal 10% damage if he has 0 AT, 1 AT, and 2 AT. And 30 and 40 have values that don't match up to their percentages. So if I roll a 40, I deal 30% damage. But once I get to 50, you deal 50, 60, 70, 80, all the way up to 400%. So these numbers, you have to look up every time, but beyond 49, it's pretty easy. If you beat him by 50, you deal 50% damage. If he has 2 AT, you deal 30%. Nice and simple. But we deal 10%, so I'll tell you right now, base damage of your fist is 20 plus your strength modifier. Ours is 7, that's 5. So we deal 25 damage, so 10% of 25 is 2.5, which isn't very much. I like rounding up in all damage, so it's 3. That's a round of Anima combat, one-on-one. You do that whether you have 100 guys or 1 guy. Very simple. There's one thing I hate about it, though. And that's, let's say we had a full party of, 4 adventurers here. So let's just copy and paste our hero, 4 more times. We have 4 people now in our party. And let's say we're going to be fighting, I don't know, 6 bad guys. They outnumber us. The issue of this is before we all roll initiative, I as a DM basically have to write down all the actions these guys are taking immediately. Like like right before I roll. Or hope to remember all of them. And all my heroes need to tell me all of their actions, and that to make sure they don't cheat. And this means that if I beat them in initiative, I can ruin their plan and they will lose actions because of weird things I do, for example. And this puts the players in a bad spot, and it makes it your players can't be flexible in a fight. They have to be very rigid with what they do. They have to make sure that their actions are so specific that they can't do certain things like cast a fireball spell in area over here. Because if the goblins move to engage them, they're not going to cast a fireball spell in there anymore, are they? Instead, the way I like doing combat is only slightly different. I like treating it more like a D&D game, Pathfinder, where you roll your initiative for the weapon, quote-unquote, you want to use. So magic rolls fists. Everything else uses the weapon you're going to be using for your action. If any weapon. If you're not using a weapon, you can just roll your fists, obviously, still. Because it's usually faster. And then when it's your turn, you declare your action. The only caveat to that is involves magic, where if you charge up your Xeon, you have to first declare what spell you're casting when you charge it up to cast it immediately. But beyond that, that's what I like doing. It makes the combat a bit more smooth, and it means that if something like this happens, where players made actions like, oh, I'm going to cast Fireball over here, I'm going to, go over here. Oh, I can't go there. That guy beat me, so I'm stuck here now, so I just don't do anything because I was going to attack. You make it so you don't get screwed over. And the one thing you have to do as a DM is make sure you keep track of the negatives for doing things like double attacks and, other weird actions. Other negatives you get in combat are, for example, let's talk about the negatives this guy in the middle gets. For example, he is flanked on all sides, literally. He has someone in every possible position, including an ally. In this position, this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy all get a flank bonus. It's a negative, actually. This is a bit weird with the game as well. And I'll tell you how I handle it versus how the game might handle it. So let's see. I think it's options in hand-to-hand combat. Here it is, yeah. Special combat. This is for being flanked from behind, surprised, stuff like that. So this game is much easier if you never give your players bonuses and negatives, and instead make player bonuses negatives on monsters, and player negatives bonuses on monsters. So this guy who's flanked would normally get -30, -30, and -10 to attack. Instead, you give the monsters +30 to attack and give them +10 to defense when they're flanked. When they're behind, it'd be +30 to the monster's defense against being attacked, and the monster gets a +80 to attacking them. This makes it way easier to do it because then your player characters need to do as little math as possible. As a DM, I think it's way better in this game if you simply just do all the math yourself. You should just do that. It's useful. The only math that you should make your players do are things that involve all action penalties or very specific debuffs. Like when they get crit. In fact, let's talk about critical hits next. I think that's a great topic to go into. So this guy's surrounded on all sides, like I said, so let's talk about this. This puts him in a very specific bad scenario. So flank, 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 back attack. DM, why come only this guy gets a back attack? Why isn't this guy? There's no facing in this game like in D&D and stuff. That's correct. This guy is surrounded on all sides by 8 guys, though. So what that means is one guy gets a back attack, everyone else gets a flank attack. That sounds pretty bad for this guy. It does. What could happen to this guy? What's the worst case scenario, DM? Worst case scenario is obviously he just outright dies. These guys, stab him at all sides and he's dead. Let's talk about being attacked multiple times and what kind of penalties this guy can expect to get. So, I'm just going to roll the dice. I'm not going to bother rolling these guys' attack rolls. I'm going to take this guy's negatives as if it was normal Anima. And I'm just going to show you how bad it gets when you're being attacked by 5 guys at the same time. In this situation, this guy probably wouldn't be gained up so hard, but, sometimes you get fucked. The DM might have hated you. So, assuming these guys are all clones, in the first attack, this would be his penalty, just -30, whatever. Probably would have dodged that attack, too. Now it gets worse. The other guy's flanking him, but he's been attacked twice now. Well, this is the second time he's being attacked, I should say. Since he's blocking or dodging, he gets another negative 30 for defending himself again. That's pretty bad. Now this guy's result after rolling at 64 is around the base value of his enemy's attack. He's probably getting hit there. The third attack is even worse. That defense penalty we just talked about is negative 30 upgrades to negative 50. So this guy and this guy have attacked. Now this guy's attacking. This guy just rolled a 14 on his defense roll and his theoretical attack. As you can see, the penalties are stacking up pretty high against you. You might die at this point. In fact, you're probably getting critical hits. I'll wait for the critical hit at the very worst attack, though, because that's funnier, I feel. That's better. So at this point, the negatives are stacked so high that, well, before they were stacked this high, but now they're stacked even further, that this person is solely relying on a dice roll to not get hit. And he got a positive number, luckily, but the next hit's can be worse. So the next hit's could be negative 90 plus the back attack, so minus 180. Wow. Could you imagine if this happened and that goblin like snuck on him? That's another negative 80 if you're surprised, which happens when you get snuck up on. So that's like negative a lot. I'm not gonna go into the math. So this guy at this point rolled negative 100. What's that mean? When you roll a negative number, you add that to your opponent's attack score, basically. That's really bad, isn't it? Negative 100. Let's talk about critical hits now, because at this point, this guy'd be either dead or critically hit. What's a critical hit? When you take half your current life points in a single blow, you take a critical hit. What you do at that point is you roll the damage that you took that took you below, that did half your current HP. So let's say in this case you took 100 damage. That sounds pretty likely, even with a dagger. So the monster rolls this, and then he rolls a physical resistance check. We talked about resistances previously. I'll pull up our test character to show you. There, these are these. They're mostly modified by Constitution. A few of them are modified by power, and one's modified by willpower. His is 35. Let's roll it. Let's see what happens, and we'll describe how bad this can get. That's pretty bad. How bad is it, though? That's a 79. So when it's 79, we also need to roll for location on this guy to see where he was hit. Because at this point, it will cause additional effects. 33. I think that's the kidneys, actually. That's kind of ironic. You get a lot of kidney shots in this game, actually, I found. Maybe it's the law of averages. Yeah, it's the kidneys. So let's look at the critical hit chart. Let's see what this means. So we got the 51 to 100. So when you get crit, no matter what, you suffer. You suffer up to the total difference between your PHR check and the critical effect check as an all-action penalty. That means this poor sucker just suffered a negative 79 all-action penalty. Could you imagine all those penalties he just took if he still survived that attack? Plus that negative 79? Like let's see how negative. I'm not gonna roll a dice. I'm just gonna. This guy has a net negative 189 to defend himself against anything. Anything. That's ridiculous, obviously. If you're in that position, you're probably dead. So, in the first category, location doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you get hit. In this category, it does. Because if you hit in like the arm or something, you might drop your sword. This guy got quote-unquote lucky and just lost a kidney, probably. Or a kidney got damaged, I should say. At this level, limbs will not kill somebody, luckily. You won't just cut off an arm. You might damage an arm, though. You might knock something out of their arm. You might knock something off of them that was loosely held. If you hit someone's shield arm, they might drop their shield. If you hit them in the leg, they'll probably go slower. And at this rate, the difference between the first tier and second tier is the value which he was critically hit can only get down to half its value, so 39 in this case, I believe. And will stay there until he's healed. That's pretty bad. And it only goes away at a rate of 5 points per combat turn. The next tier is even worse. It's the same as the second tier, except for now, if it's a limb, it's irreparably destroyed, so completely shattered and broken or amputated. And if it's a head or heart, the person dies immediately. At 150, that character is immediately knocked unconscious, and dies in a number of minutes equal to his constitution if he doesn't get medical attention. Basically, you start dying very quickly. It's not good to be critically hit. It's terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Here are some other things, though, you should know about combat that can be useful. So let's say he got in the situation, and he, by all luck, the monsters weren't so mean. They spread out their attacks fairly evenly. He only got attacked once and he dodged it. How does someone get out of the situation? Like, this is pretty bad. You're surrounded and stuff, and if these guys start dying, your friends, it's only gonna get worse. There are some combat maneuvers you can do to get out of the situation. You could roll an acrobatic check to try and leap over this guy to get out of his face. That one's pretty easy. But beyond that, when it comes to stuff like this, when you're outnumbered and outgunned, it's better off just running usually, or finding a way to take out one guy really quick. Like, if I was the party face or leader of this party, I'd probably gang up on this guy down here, and then, we'd run using this gap. Worst case scenario would be we get some attacks opportunities, because when you leave someone who's locked in melee with you, they get a D&D style attack opportunity on you. Though, if they've already attacked, they don't get it, so that's good. They have to be ready for that attack. So, running in this situation would be really good, be really valuable to run and regroup. Or run and cast an AoE to kill these guys off. Stuff like that. Beyond that, the other important things with combat involve a lot of really, niche cases that don't come up very often. Like, ranged combatant versus ranged combatant, how far away you two are, and other X factors and other strangeness. But basically, if you're a normal boxer and character, you're just stabbing guys. Maybe you might disarm them or make an area attack. Area attack would be good here, but you might hit your friends, which would suck. But whatever, fuck them. You just want to live. And that's the combat for the player character side. You want to kill your threats as quickly as possible, and you don't want to get surrounded or put in a bad situation. Also, like most RPGs, initiative is king. Let's start with the DM side of this. I'm a dungeon master, and I want to design encounters for Anima Beyond Fantasy. How should I do that? How should I make these encounters interesting, but difficult, and make sure that they are something the player characters will enjoy? So first things first, let's assume this is a level 1 party, and these are all the enemies. I want to throw like 6 guys at them. These 2 have range weapons or something, and these 4 are melee dudes. When you want to outnumber your party, you want to make sure you outnumber them with weaker adversaries. So I would make these guys level 0 if they're level 1, for example. Or if they're level 2, these guys would be level 1. Or even still level 0. Why? Because there's more of them. They outnumber them. Outnumbering someone's a huge edge. Like, if I was a DM, I'd probably go like this. And send this guy forward, and these guys would flank this guy over here. And then this guy would have probably like a pole arm and stay over here and hold his action to stab this guy when he approaches. Stuff like that. And these guys would pepper them with arrows. Now the party has to make a choice. Do they beat their face against these front line of guys with sticks or whatever, or do they try and go around and go for the archers, who might be more dangerous? Up to the party, up to their composition. This guy could be a wizard. He might just go, guys, I'm just going to cast Fireball back there and kill all of them. Or maybe you're all non-magical normies. You're like, guys, I'm going to shoot my arrow at that one, and then you two flank each of you, and then we'll let our tank guy in the middle just kind of hold out, and I'll help him out when I can. It's interesting decisions you have to make to decide how you want to deal with these guys. And since the level lower, that means the party has a bigger advantage when it comes to attack and defense, and are more likely to hit these guys. But these guys love the numbers edge, so they will go and you'll want to try and pick them off one at a time. These guys should be attempting to swarm a single person to kill them. Or they should be swarming them and attempt to stagger them at the very least. And maybe these guys are level 1 and will try and kill people with their bows. Because bows do little damage, and you want to find a fine, razor-fine balance between making an encounter that can kill somebody, but making sure that you don't kill them unfairly. The worst thing that happens to the player characters is they get killed in very unfair ways sometimes. Like when you open roll a lot, or when you other things. So you want to make sure that if you're swarming them, you want to give these guys low damage weapons, first off. These guys shouldn't have claymores or battle axes. They should have short swords or daggers or maces. Things that do low damage, so even when I beat them by 100, and they take 100% damage, they only take like 40 damage to get crit. Beyond that, let's talk about more like a boss fight. How do you, if you're doing a dungeon, you want a boss at the end, like, what are good character archetypes for that? How do you design those kind of fights? A good way to make it, an easy way to do it, is give bosses mechanics. A good mechanic might be maybe you can't hurt the boss until you kill those mooks first. Very basic, like MMO style tactics. Or maybe the way the boss works, maybe he has a lot of crowd control, and you have to use specific abilities picked up in the dungeon to get around that. Beyond that, there is another type of monster you might want to consider using against the party called a DR creature, or damage resistance creature. These creatures work a bit differently. These are things like dragons, ogres, big, bulky dudes who don't give a rat's ass about you hitting them. They do not defend themselves, more or less. In base Anima Beyond Fantasy rules, they still get their 1d100 luck roll. However, in the core exit rule changes, they only get a base of 20 absorption plus their high ATs they usually have. Or in my version of it, they don't get a dice roll or absorption. They just rely on their AT. Why do I do this, you might ask? It's because these creatures take so long to kill sometimes that with my like level of luck where I get a lot of open rolls usually I find, it gets to be a bit of a drag to kill some of these guys when I open roll on a monster that should be easy to hit and you miss because I got lucky per se. That's not fun for the heroes. It's funner to let your heroes go all in on these guys and unleash their biggest attacks, try and take them out. DR creatures have weaknesses. Area attacks deal double damage to these guys. That's good. That makes the area effect spells that your wizardmen have extra good against them. They tend to have elemental weaknesses or armor weaknesses. They might have low impact AT, for example, or low thrust AT. They might have a weak point you can explode for massive damage, but here's one weakness they don't have. These fuckers don't get staggered. Doesn't matter what you do to them, you cannot stagger them. Beyond that, some simple things I'd recommend if you want to make sure these guys stay intimidating. You shouldn't let these monsters get effects like stunned or things like that. You don't want them to be able to completely lose an action. Though, make sure your players can still debuff them with like all action penalties and other similar spells, because a character might be built completely around that. You don't want to take that away, but you don't want to let your players stun these monsters, because when they get stunned, it's kind of like in any role-playing game ever. If you can stun all the monsters with one ability, you just kind of immediately win. So it's kind of like trying to stun a dragon. You just probably shouldn't be able to. It just makes the encounter less fun because you just immediately invalidate it. But also remember that your players should still be able to get positional advantages. So if these are all melee dudes, they should be able to go like this and this and this and flank the guy. And you might ask, but DM, this thing doesn't roll defense. How do I give it a negative? Easy. So when they roll their attack roll, and you're looking at it, you just add it to their attack roll at the very end, and just do all the math for them. If you do the math for your players, it's really simple. Like if he rolled 170, I just add 30 for flanking it, so 200. Easy. It's as simple as that, and I feel that's the best way to do it, because the second you ask players to do esoteric math, they're going to fuck up. The only math they should do is spending fatigue, all action penalties, and other negatives or buffs that specifically pertain to only them. That's their job. Beyond that, you also want to keep careful consideration of the kinds of fights with other people. Sometimes, some parties are really good at killing big monsters, so you could be okay about throwing DR creatures. Some parties are more designed to take up more social encounters, like bandits on the road, and maybe they might not kill these bandits, they might want to talk their way out. Not every fight in Anima needs to be ended with a sword. In fact, I recommend to the player characters that they should try and find ways to subvert encounters. Now, when a player subverts the encounter, make sure to still give them the combat experience, because even if they defeat these bandits, I'll call them now, by, convincing them that they are from the royal military and be a poor to fuck with them, you just give them experience for being successful. Maybe they roll a persuade check to convince the band leader that they're serious business. Maybe one of their friends prior to this forged a seal to prove this. Maybe this is a lie they've been using a lot. Reward them experience doing that, because when they can roleplay out of an encounter, you can build a lot of character that way. You can learn what these guys are willing to do and say to not fight somebody. The only downside to not killing these guys is they miss out on the loot, but you know what? That's fine. It's likely these bands didn't have very good loot in the first place. Let's be real, they're fucking bandits, guys. Come on. And beyond that, I think the biggest suggestion to any DM who wants to DM this game, or any game really, any game when it comes to combat, is don't be a dick. If like your bad guy shouldn't be like, oh, I signaled this guy out, I'm gonna go kill this guy. Don't do that. Don't be a dick. Here's what I do. You have 4 targets. You don't care who they go for, or these guys have no reason to think to go after anyone else. Roll a d4. They go for this guy over here, he's number 4, and then this guy above him goes for number 1. He goes over here. That's fine. Enemies don't need to be precisely logical. Your player probably should be if they want to think the way out of these fights. I find it's better to randomly determine your targets because player characters don't feel so bad. They see you're rolling a dice to see who these guys attack because you don't care. And it feels really bad as a player character when, for example, if you make a wizard and all the monsters go for the wizard. Sure, players do that because that makes sense. Kill the wizard like now. But monsters, they don't know you're a wizard at first. Maybe you're just a bard. Maybe you're some guy the party's escorting. It has nothing to do with them. You don't know until the fight started. At that point, when the fight started and the bad guys realize, hey, there's a wizard back there, they might change up their strategy to react to it. Or if they realize this guy over here is wearing a full suit of plate mail, they might just have one guy, tie him up and then go after other squishier people or they can actually kill. So in the first round, especially, I'd say make sure you have your enemies, attack in a way that makes some sense, but don't just gang up on the first squishy guy you see, because that's not fun. And beyond that, make sure everyone's having fun in the fight, including yourself. A boring fight or a boring way to make combat work is the fastest way to make these games boring. And to be honest, sometimes it's just a symptom of like you've done so many fights that they've gotten boring, and that's when you spice things up. In Anima, there's a good way to do that by making technicians, wizards, and mentalists and summoner combatants for your enemies to fight, your heroes to fight. Because then, fighting a technician is very different from fighting a random ass guy with a sword and shield. Because that technician might have a big area attack that you're not aware of, or you might always go first because he has really crazy initiative augmentation or other weird abilities that you don't expect a normal guy to have. Or in the opposite case, against the summoner, he might just summon a crazy, ridiculous monster and want you to fight it, and then when you kill it, he just runs away or something stupid. You still killed the monster, but he got away. Or maybe he summons things that eventually overwhelm him and you're forced to run away. It's those kind of situations. And I think that's all I can really talk about combat. Like I said, there are some niche cases and things you can do and obtuse things you can do, like using some secondary abilities in combat. But I feel talking about them in this generalized video would be pointless, because I think it's better if I let you know they exist and tell you to go to the combat section of the book and look them up yourself at this point, because if you know the basics, you can then adapt these secondary abilities that you read about in the book to your combat style. So a good example I will give, though, because it's very underused, I find, is the sleight of hand skill to defend against projectiles. You can catch arrows, throw weapons, stuff like that with your sleight of hand skill instead of defending against them. And with that ability, you can do some really cool stuff. And there's other things you can do, like using acrobatics and other things. So I'd recommend looking into it. And yeah, that's combat. Easy peasy. It takes a bit of getting used to whether you use the base Anima rules or what I suggest to be different, but either way, I think once you learn the rules enough, the combat starts out being slow, but becomes much quicker. That's me signing off, though. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you found it helpful and enlightening. And if you did, I don't know, leave a comment or something. Have a good day.